The decisions they make influence sports in Arizona now and in the future. Every move they make is news. Doug and Wolf present Newsmakers Week 2014. Presented by National Bank of Arizona. Arizona Sports, now on 98.7 FM.
Thanks for listening to Doug and Wolf this morning on Arizona Sports, now on 98.7 FM. And this is Newsmakers Week. This is day 5. And what we've been doing, if you're new to the show, we've been doing this for years now, in which we invite all the local teams to send in their decision makers and talk to us. I guess 1-on-2 is the way to look at it, with the two of us. And it shows you how important you are as a fan to all of the franchises, because this doesn't happen in any other city. No other city has GMs of 4 major franchises, 1 major Division I college, all come in during 1 week and share time. But it shows you again now with the Cardinals in here, their devotion to you, the fans, and Steve Keim, the GM, joining Doug and Wolf. Thanks. I imagine Combine's coming up, so you've got a lot of work on your plate, and yet at the same time, this might be a small window where you actually get a little family time. So to wake up and deal with Wolf this morning, we appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's great to be here. Actually, you can see that my father-in-law, Gene, and my dad, Ken, are with me. They are the hired muscle for the day. So that is in case Dougie Franz, as usual, asks any questions that concern me. I will obviously notify these guys that I'm not appreciative of the question.
So what do you think of today, Ben Clowney event?
I think he's not going to be there 20.
I see.
Well said right there. I think before we can go forward, what do you say we go ahead and look back? 10-6 in the NFC West. You got 2 teams that played in the NFC Championship in the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. So you've got a team that won the Super Bowl in Seattle, right? What do you think of when you think of 2013?
You know, we made strides, and I think that's one of the most important things for our organization. At the same time, there are still major concerns, major holes that we need to address. And I think it was a great litmus test this year when you have to play teams like San Francisco and Seattle, because it exposes where your weaknesses are. And we have taken the time this offseason to self-evaluate, see where we need to improve, and that's going to be a big aspect of our free agency process in the next several weeks. We just spent the last few days setting our free agent board. We're working on our target list as we speak, and then next week we're heading to Indianapolis for the Combine.
Go deeper into self-evaluation for the fans. What does that entail? What do you do? What does a GM do in the month of February, or if you don't make the playoffs, January and February?
You know, a lot of times matchups, looking at back to particular games where obviously there were a lot of tight games for us this year. And those games that we lost, why did we lose them? So those 6 games, where were our issues? Obviously, tight end was an issue for us this year. And when I say tight end, I'm talking about our matchups where we were unable to cover tight ends down the field. So we want to get longer and more athletic. Obviously, at safety, we want to do some things that offsets the tight ends that we have to face every week, and then we want to get physical on both sides of the line. We've talked about our never-ending challenge of trying to improve our offensive line, and that's something that we'll focus on this offseason.
Steve, do you believe in the theory that a high tide floats all boats, that it's a good thing that you're in the NFC West, the most competitive division in the National Football League, because it forces you to compete, right? You either have to fight or run.
It does, you know, and people talk about all the time, you know, when you're in the evaluation process of particular players, that this guy does or doesn't play to the competition. In this division, you don't have that luxury of playing down to them. I mean, it's every week. It's bring your A game. And if you don't bring your A game, you're going to be left to the side. So it's fun. It's exciting. It's a great challenge. I know I certainly embrace it. Michael Bidwell, Bruce Arians, they embrace it. And that's where it starts at the top. And that's what's fun about working with Michael. Michael's so passionate. He's so competitive. And that's what you want in your owner and your president.
How does free agency affect the draft, or does it at all?
It does, because obviously once you address certain needs, even though when we address the draft, it's a best player available mindset. But at the same time, when you have two players ranked in a similar area and you've already addressed that position in free agency, it makes the decision easy.
When you say an area, sorry, Wolf, if you say an area, you have two players ranked in the same area.
Right.
How does that work? How do you rank players for the draft?
Well, you grade them with a number. And so, for example, if you have two players and you're sitting in the second round and we have an 84 on them, and one's a tight end and one is potentially a safety, and you've addressed that position in free agency where you've signed a top safety, a guy that you think can come in and right away help you, obviously, when you make that decision during the draft, it's the tight end. You got to find the guy that has comparable ability and go with that particular position.
Philosophically, how has free agency changed from a general manager's standpoint over the last 4 or 5 seasons in the league?
I think with the new CBA, some of the things have changed when it comes to the market. There's always going to be your handful of players that go out there and get paid, but in particular last year, it was shocking to some of the agents and the players to see the numbers drop off. That's why there were so many one-year deals done. So many players were looking for bigger paydays. They had higher expectations, so they settled for one-year prove-it deals. And then now they're hoping that things are going to change in the market, which, personally I don't see changing. So at some point in time, some of these younger players are going to have to accept the new day of the NFL and the new salary cap and have to make a decision.
Steve Keim, general manager, Arizona Cardinals, joining Doug and Wolf. You signed a lot of those one-year prove-it type guys. Who proved it to you this year?
Obviously Carlos Dansby stands out as the guy who played at an extremely high level. But when you go back and you look at his numbers in Miami, he played at a high level there too. I think he had 130-plus tackles in Miami the previous season, and that may have been a financial reason. But Carlos was not only a fantastic player on the field for us, he added huge leadership skills to our locker room. And anytime that you can have a middle linebacker with Carlos's experience, with his intelligence, his ability to line up and help other players around him, he was a huge asset for us.
Steve, what do you think the likelihood is right now as it stands that you're going to be able to re-sign Carlos Dansby?
We've been aggressive in our approach to trying to get Carlos re-signed. Obviously, it takes two sides, and I think that we'll work in the next several weeks towards a common understanding. It's one of those things that as a general manager and a player, it's hard to not take things personal at times, when it comes to negotiations. Right. But Carlos knows how important he is to us. He knows that we want him back, and he's obviously a great fit here. And I know he and his family love living in Phoenix.
To a fan, football starts around early August, maybe for some in September. I know the 2014 has already started for you, 2014 season, but it officially starts coming up in about 3 weeks. So do you expect that you would have a Dansby deal done before the actual beginning of the 2014 free agent period, or do you think you're kind of getting the feeling he wants to test the waters a little bit?
Well, the first part of it is that would be the goal. That was the goal as soon as the season was over with. But at the same time, it takes two. And obviously, Carlos has an idea of what he wants to do. You'd have to ask him. But at the same time, we feel really good about what we have going. Obviously, Larry did a few things to help us contractually, and that's the same mindset all of our players have to take when it comes to their deals and the structure of the cap. We're going to need some help, and we need to put players around you to have some success. So at some point, all guys need to show some unselfishness, and at the same time, we need to reward these guys if they're playing well.
In terms of free agency in the National Football League, is recruiting back in the NFL? Because it's kind of important, right? Because I think we're going to see more and more of these one-year contracts going forward, and recruiting then becomes imperative.
Recruiting is huge. Recruiting is something that, and when I say recruiting, there are obviously rules enforced by the league. We can't talk to these players until free agency opens March 11th. But at the same time, once free agency opens, it's fair game. And I've always felt like, before I was a general manager, if I ever had an opportunity, that was an area that I was going to try to improve because of the things that we had going in our favor. Why can you not sell this community? It's one of the top 5 places in my mind to live. We play in one of the top 5 venues in the National Football League. There's so many things in our favor. We have a fantastic head football coach who is energetic. He's passionate. why would you not want to come play in Phoenix? Particularly, no disrespect, if you get off the plane from Detroit or Cleveland or Philadelphia right now and there's 15 inches of snow, 80 degrees and palm trees isn't a bad gig.
And it worked with John Abraham and Eric Winston, didn't it?
It did. And I think that when you have some success in those areas, these guys talk. So I'm sure Eric Winston and John Abraham are talking to all their friends that they've played with in the past and said, this Phoenix thing is a pretty good gig.
Steve Keim just mentioned a name there that's about to become an unrestricted free agent. We'll ask him about being able to shore up the offensive line coming up next on Arizona Sports Now on 98.7 FM.
The decisions they make influence sports in Arizona now and in the future. Every move they make is news. Doug and Wolf present Newsmakers Week 2014. Presented by National Bank of Arizona. Arizona Sports Now on 98.7 FM.